Well, we're missing one turkey today, but it seems like the gang's all together out on their evening stroll. But everybody's here.
Hopefully this thing won't vibrate too much. So today where we're headed to, I got a 320 cat excavator that you'd see in one of my earlier videos where I had done an injector return flow test on it to dictate that it had bad injectors. Well, this is actually my second day going back out to this machine because yesterday when I went out to it, we put a set of injectors in it pretty much just to test my theory that I was, that I was correct on it. Anyways, so put the injectors in yesterday, and to be honest, if those injectors would have been fine, I wouldn't worry about going out there today. But anyways, the machine, it fired right up like it was supposed to, whereas before it was taking a long time to start. You'd have to use ether to fire it up, and if the machine ever shut off, it would never start back, right? So anyways, put the injectors in yesterday, and it fired up, and it was running, and then it just started smoking like the devil, man. Oh my goodness, it was terrible, right? Just like one of the injectors that we had put in probably like may have been stuck and was just dumping fuel maybe, or just was a larger style injector or something, like maybe the injectors weren't a balanced set. Anyhow, I told the guy who was out there with me, I said, hey, look, I tell you what, since we know that I was correct, let's go ahead and put a set of cat injectors in it. So they called a cat dealer, and I went and picked them up this morning, and we're going to go out there here now and put them in. And so I'm going to show you guys, if you've never done this, how to pull these injectors out. And I'm not going to necessarily go the same route that Caterpillar suggests, but for the majority of you guys watching this, you're probably not concerned about doing it the same way the cat does to replace the injector. So just stick with me here, and once I get out there to the machine, I'll let you guys ride along.
Okay, guys, you'll need a 10 millimeter to take the clamps off for your intake tube, and you may need a 14 if somebody's changed to a different style clamp. But since this is all factory, this is a 10. You'll need a 12 millimeter to take off the cover to get to your injection lines, and you'll also need a 12 to take off your valve cover bolts. Here to the left, you'll have to take off your crankcase breather tube. There are two clamps there, and it also has two bolts to take off. I'm just going to take off the two bolts, which are 14 millimeters, because the actual tube is broke off, and you can see it in one of the shots there. And then once that's done, you can pull your valve cover off, and you'll be able to get to the top of the motor. Okay, guys, with your valve cover off, now you can get down to your injectors. You're going to need a 7 millimeter for your injector harness, where it connects to the top of the injectors, and you're going to need a 3/4 or 19 millimeter wrench for your injector lines. This is where I'm going to do a little bit different from Caterpillar. Caterpillar suggests that you remove the lines and discard them. I'm just going to loosen the lines up just so I can get the injectors out. What you'll be able to see when I change the camera angle, you'll see that there's a rubber grommet pass through from the rocker box over to the injector. And what you can do is you can just take that rubber grommet and just slide it back. Once you slide it back and you have the line loose, you can pull the injector straight up, with minimal effort. Now, one thing I have to make sure I let you guys know, that with these common rail engines, you're going to be at a minimum of 3,000 psi line pressure and a maximum of 30,000. And so that being said, it's very dangerous to try to just crack these lines loose, and have your hands in the way or anything like that, because the pressure can definitely hurt you, and have a fuel injection, which is not good. So make sure you're really careful when you're trying to relieve system pressure. So if you can find a way to disable your fuel system, that would be the safest way to take these lines loose. The way I did it, I just cracked the lines loose slowly and just let the fuel pressure bleed off. Okay, you'll need a 7mm again for your injection harness, and you'll need a T40 Torx for your injector hold down. When you pull the bolt out, it'll be a bolt and there'll be also a washer with it. So make sure you get both of those when you pull them out. What I like to do to remove the injector, with these right here, you can use a rolling heel bar or a lady slipper. I've heard them referred to as a bunch of different things. Or you can use a pry bar with a bend on the end of it, to get up under the injector and use it just to pop the seal loose. Be able to pop the injector right on out. You see me there, I was pulling out the washer that goes with the hold down bolt, and it's actually a special washer too, I might add. It's got a kind of concave, or I guess you'd say the washer itself is convex, and the retainer for it in the injector hold down is concave. Anyways, make sure you get that out. And you see me here popping the injector up and out. See how easy that was? It comes right on out. One thing you need to notice, that actually they shouldn't look like this when they come out. This one right here, this injector right here, something crazy happened with the crush washer when we tightened the injector down. So that's probably why we had the smoking and everything from yesterday. But either way, I'm glad that that did happen, because these were actually a more inferior injector in my mind. But hey, in the interest of being frugal, sometimes stuff like that happens and you have to shell out the money. Okay, now I've got all 6 injectors out. Got the injector bores clean, made sure there's no bottom of them. All right. So what I've got here is a Caterpillar reman injector, and you'll see here in a second that it's got one O-ring on the body, and it's got a copper sealing washer that goes on the very end of it. All right. Also on this injector, one thing you need to keep note of is the injector trim file number, which I try to show you here, but you can't really see. The trim file number is right beside that QR code. Generally, it's a 4-digit number with the Caterpillars. I'm not sure about the other manufacturers. That trim file number you need to put in the ECM, to help the ECM balance the fuel when it's running and under a load. One thing to remember with these reman injectors, with Caterpillar from the factory, a brand new injector has a QR code and a trim file number, which is generally found on the top of the injector where you put the harness in at. The reman ones are generally on the side of the body. Another thing about the Cat reman, and this isn't just for injectors, this is just Cat reman in general. Generally, it's a OR number or a 10R number. Like with this injector, it starts off with 10R, and that R is for reman. So once you put your O-ring and your copper washer on, make sure you put your injector hold down on, specifically with this motor here, because the injector hold down is hard to get in between the valve springs. Put the injector hold down on the body of the injector and then set it over in the hole. One thing to remember with these injector hold downs also is that the hold down has got a concave receiver groove for the washer, and make sure that's facing up. Okay, here's what the injector hold down looks like in there. You can see the concave receiver for the washer. Make sure that's facing up. Like I said, make sure you just go ahead and put that on the injector when you stick it in. Another thing with the trim file numbers, which I forgot to mention, make sure with the trim file numbers you keep in mind which trim file number goes with which cylinder. One thing that you can see here to my right hand is the injector harness, and I usually unplug it on the outside of the rocker box there. And just pull it to the side. That way, say if you do put the valve cover back on and you're testing it or whatever, and you don't get and you get it where it doesn't start, at least it's a lot simpler to plug it up and say, oh hey, I forgot to hook the injector harness back up. Alright, so now what you do is put your injector hole down in. I usually start at a couple threads, and then I'll slide my grommet back in place, and then I'll start my injector line. If you tighten the injector up first and then try to start the line, you can be a little off and the line may not start. And then say if it does happen to start, but you are a little off with the line pressures that we're running, it's a good possibility that you'd have a pressure leak because the fuel would leak past the fitting because it's not maiden 100%. But if you do it the way I'm doing it, I haven't had any problems doing it this way, leaving the injector a little loose, and I don't think you would have any issues either. Anyways, you repeat this process for the remaining 5 cylinders. Okay, so now this is where I'm getting ready to fire it up, and unfortunately I lost all my audio clips, which obviously you guys have probably noticed, but here you go. I fire this machine up and you see it's smoking like the devil when I first fired it up. That's because I had a couple cylinders that still had some fuel in them, and then it was also some fuel in the muffler from the injectors that we put in there to test. They weren't the greatest injectors in the world, but hey, it's okay. It proved a point that we didn't have to use ether anymore. So it cleared up, and you'll see here later on the operator, he's going to run it, and by that point he ran it I think about 30 minutes or so, and it cleared up. Machine run good, didn't have to use any more ether to start it. You could shut it off and it fired right back up. Look at that, pretty. No more having to use ether to start this baby. No more ether. A man says it's running strong, stronger than it ever has, or at least while he's been working here. Definitely won't have to use any more ether to start it. Because this thing right here, just spinning over it would not build fuel pressure to crank. And like I said, come out with the injector return flow test a few months ago. Recommended the injectors, and after some mulling it over, we decided to approve putting injectors in it, and hey, she's back running. Bye-bye, track hoe. We'll see you again later.